All right, so making money online while working remotely. It seems like it's become less of a side hustle thing and more of a full-on lifestyle for some people.
It really has, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I'm curious to get your take on that kind of shift.
Well, it's pretty interesting to see, The pandemic definitely sped things up, and now there's this whole ecosystem for remote work that's just blossomed.
Right.
And it's not just tech anymore, which is what everyone always thinks of. It's healthcare and education, even like regular corporate jobs.
Yeah,
So it really makes you think about what work is going to look like in the future, long term.
yeah, for sure. So, okay, let's say someone is listening and they're thinking, this all sounds amazing, but like, where do I even begin?
Right.
Because we're talking about, are we talking about full-time jobs, freelancing? Like, what exactly are we talking about?
Well, I think that's kind of the cool part. There are so many different ways to go about it.
Okay.
So you could jump into freelancing, right? Try out platforms like Upwork or Fiverr, offer your skills there. And, it's not just writing and design anymore. Like the typical stuff you think of. There's a real need for people with more specialized skills like data analysis and even virtual bookkeeping.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So what if someone, you know, they're not really cut out for freelancing. Like they're more interested in something with, a steady paycheck,
Right, yeah.
something a little bit more stable.
Then a full-time remote role might be more their thing.
Okay.
There are companies like Automatic. They're the folks behind WordPress, and they're entirely remote first.
Wow.
Their whole culture is built around like asynchronous communication and these distributed teams. And they're
Mhm.
not the only ones. Big companies like Salesforce and Amazon, they're getting on board with remote work too.
So you're saying there's basically something out there for everyone.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the whole creator economy thing.
Right.
That's where things get really interesting, especially for folks who want to build something on their own. I mean, think about YouTubers with millions of subscribers or, podcasters getting big sponsorship deals.
But isn't that market super crowded already? Like,
Yeah.
can anyone really make a name for themselves in that space anymore?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely competitive, no doubt.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The internet, it really values people who are experts in something specific.
Oh, okay, I see.
So instead of trying to do everything for everyone, right,
Right.
you're better off focusing on a certain audience, with content that's unique and actually helps them.
Right, that makes sense. Okay. So I can see how that would be appealing, but how do you actually make money from creating content?
Yeah.
Is it just ads, or are there other ways to bring in money?
Well, ads are part of it for sure, especially on platforms like YouTube.
Okay.
But smart creators, they're figuring out ways to get income from different sources.
No.
So think about things like online courses or membership communities or even selling merch related to your band.
So you're basically building a whole business around your content, not just relying on one platform's algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where understanding the business side of things really comes in.
Okay, yeah.
You got to know how to market yourself, manage money, and make a plan for growth that'll last.
Right. So let's say someone, loves teaching, right? Could they, like, package their knowledge into an online course and reach people all over the world?
Absolutely, yeah. Platforms like Udemy and Teachable have made it super easy to create and sell online courses.
Wow.
And it's not just like traditional school subjects either. You'll find courses on anything from photography to coding to personal development.
Oh, that's cool. So what about people who like working with their hands, like selling actual products? Is there a place for them in this online world too?
Oh, yeah. E-commerce is huge. Platforms like Shopify have made it surprisingly easy to set up an online store.
Okay.
And then there are places like Etsy, which are perfect for selling handmade or vintage stuff.
Right. I've also heard a lot about dropshipping lately. Is that a good option for someone who's just starting out?
Well, dropshipping can be a good way to try out e-commerce without having to deal with all the inventory stuff.
Oh.
But you got to do your research, right? Find good suppliers.
Yeah.
Because the profit margins can be pretty small and the competition is fierce.
Right, yeah. So it sounds like a lot of these options require a certain kind of, entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any options for people who are more into a traditional job setup, even if it's remote?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of remote job opportunities out there.
Okay.
Sites like We Work Remotely and remote.co, they specialize in remote-first companies.
Okay.
And don't underestimate LinkedIn. Lots of companies are putting remote right in their job postings now.
That makes sense. So what kind of jobs are we talking about here? Is it just customer service and tech support, or is there more variety?
There's actually a lot of variety, surprisingly. You're seeing remote roles in project management, marketing, sales, even finance and accounting.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so it seems like there really is something for everyone in this space, which is great, but can also feel a bit overwhelming with so many options.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's just starting to explore all these possibilities?
That's a great question. And I think it's a perfect segue into our next section, where we'll break down some key strategies for making it in the online world.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah.
So we've talked about all the different ways to make money online, working remotely, and it seems like there are a ton of options.
Yeah.
But what are some of the keys to actually succeeding in this world?
Right.
Because you can't just pick something and hope for the best, right?
No, definitely not. It's like anything else, you know? You need the right skills, the right strategy, and you got to be able to bounce back when things get tough.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I think one of the most important things is figuring out what makes you unique.
Oh,
Like, what skills do you have? What knowledge do you have that other people would actually pay for?
that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in what's trendy, but at the end of the day, you got to offer something people actually want or need.
Exactly. And once you've figured that out, you got to build a solid online presence.
Okay.
So that could be a professional website, a portfolio showcasing your work, or even just being active on the right social media platforms.
Yep. So it's not just about having the skills. It's about making sure people can actually find you and see what you can do.
Exactly. And that's where marketing comes in.
Right.
Understanding SEO, using social media strategically, even things like paid advertising can really help get your name and your work out there.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's say you've got the skills, you've built up your online presence, you're starting to get clients or customers. What are some of the common traps people fall into and how can they avoid them?
One of the biggest challenges I see is people not managing their time well.
Okay.
When you're working from home, it's super easy to get distracted, you know? The lines between work and personal life can blur, and before you know it, you're burnt out.
Right. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So how do you suggest people stay focused and productive when they're working remotely? Any tips or strategies you found helpful?
Time blocking is a game changer.
Okay.
Basically, you schedule specific blocks of time for different tasks, and you treat those blocks like appointments you can't miss.
Oh, okay.
It helps you stay structured and prevents you from feeling overwhelmed.
Right. What about those times when you just hit a wall, like creatively, or you just lose motivation?
Yeah.
How do you stay inspired and keep pushing through those tough moments?
Networking. I can't stress that enough. Connect with other people who work remotely, whether it's online or even in person.
Yeah.
Share your experiences, get advice, learn from each other's successes and failures. It helps to know you're not alone in this.
That's so true. Community is so important, especially when you're working remotely and don't have that like built-in office environment.
Mm.
Are there any specific platforms or communities you recommend for people who are just starting out?
Oh, there are tons.
Okay.
For remote workers in general, Nomad List and Dynamite Circle are great.
Ah,
But for specific niches, you'll find Facebook groups, Slack channels, even subreddits. Basically, there are places for everyone to connect with people in their field.
all right. Good to know. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about money. Managing your income and expenses can be tricky when you're working for yourself, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what are some tips for staying on top of things financially?
One of the first things I tell people is to set up a separate bank account for their business.
Okay.
Keep your business income and expenses separate from your personal stuff. It just makes tracking everything much easier, especially when it's time to do your taxes.
Oh, speaking of taxes, that's something people often forget about when they're first starting out. Any advice for navigating the whole self-employment tax situation?
Honestly, don't be afraid to get help from a professional, like an accountant or a tax advisor.
Yeah.
Especially when you're starting out. They can help you understand all the deductions, estimated tax payments, all that fun stuff.
Okay, good advice. Now, beyond the practical stuff, what about mindset? What kind of mental shifts do you think are important for succeeding in this online world?
You have to embrace the idea of always learning. The online world changes so fast, so you got to be ready to adapt, learn new skills, and stay ahead of the curve.
Right, so it's about having that growth mindset, right?
Exactly. Seeing challenges not as roadblocks, but as opportunities to learn and get better.
I like that. And what about experimenting? Is that important too?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to try different things, test out new platforms, and see what works best for you. It's all about finding your groove and building something that'll last.
This has been so insightful. So many practical tips and valuable mindset shifts to think about. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, is there one final thought you want to leave our listener with as they start their remote work journey?
You know, the best thing about this path is the freedom it gives you.
Yeah.
You have the power to shape your own work life, set your own hours, and pursue projects that you're passionate about. So don't be afraid to embrace that freedom and design a work life that truly fulfills you.
We've talked about a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
All sorts of different ways to make money online, strategies for being successful working remotely.
Yeah,
It really seems like remote work has a lot of potential.
it does.
But I'm curious, as we're wrapping up here,
Yeah.
what are some of the benefits of this lifestyle that people might not realize right away?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the biggest benefits, but one that people don't always think about, is how it can affect your well-being.
Oh, interesting.
Like imagine no more awful commute,
Right.
more time for your hobbies,
Yeah.
things you enjoy doing, and being able to set up your day in a way that works for you.
Right. It's not just about working from anywhere. It's about having control over your time.
Exactly. And that flexibility, it goes beyond just your daily schedule.
Okay.
It can mean you can travel more, spend more time with family and friends, even go back to school or work on personal growth.
So remote work, when it's done right, can actually help you
Yeah.
have more balanced and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. And when you feel fulfilled, you tend to be more productive and creative too.
That makes sense. You're not just going through the motions. You're actually excited about what you're doing.
Exactly. And that passion, it shows in your work, which can lead to even more success down the road.
Yeah, for sure. So for someone listening who's feeling inspired but maybe a little overwhelmed by all the possibilities,
Mm.
what's one piece of advice you'd give them as they start their remote work journey?
I'd say start small. Don't try to do everything at once.
Right.
Pick one or two things that really interest you and just start experimenting. Take an online course, join a community of people with similar interests, or even reach out to someone who's already doing what you want to do.
Yeah, it's about taking action, even if it's not perfect at first.
Exactly.
Just get started and learn along the way.
Yeah, and remember, there's no one right way to do this.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another, so be open to trying new things, changing course if you need to, and finding what suits you best.
This has been such a great conversation, really eye-opening.
Good, I'm glad.
I feel energized and excited to explore some new things myself.
Me too. It really is an amazing time to be a part of this whole remote work world.
Yeah.
The possibilities are endless for people who are willing to step outside their comfort zone and create a work life that they truly love.
Well said. And to our listener, we encourage you to do just that. Step outside your comfort zone, embrace the unknown, and start building the remote work life of your dreams.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep thriving.